Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Enter the Atmosphere. Over the next 3 ETA masterclasses, I'm going to be breaking down every detail of the mix template that I've used for years and years to mix over 2,500 songs in Dolby Atmos. So let's not waste any time, let's get to it.
Try another pass.
Okay, we put in the Atmos theme.
Hey guys, Kirsty here, live at BMG Studio A. I am your host for Enter the Atmosphere. And before we get into Jeff's masterclass this week, we are going to let you guys know what is going on in the country music radio world. This is courtesy of Billboard Country Airplay. So let's take a quick look and review what songs are charting this week that Jeff has mixed and mastered in Dolby Atmos. Coming in at number 57, it's Jeff's tequila buddy, Frank Ray. Somebody Else's Whiskey, produced by the one and only Frank Rogers.
Drinking somebody else's whiskey on somebody else's tab. Riding shotgun in some other poor SOB's crew cab. Talking somebody else's ear off. She ain't my problem no more. She's drinking somebody else's whiskey. So I'm just gonna sit here and pour me a tall one and raise it up high. Here's to a real damn good goodbye.
Next up at number 54 is Chase Rice with Bad Day to Be a Cold Beer, produced by Oscar Charles.
It's working like a dog, it's got me dog tired. Pushing 12-hour days, pulling all damn nighters. But come 5 o'clock, I'm the hell out of here. Man, it's a bad, bad day to be a cold, cold beer, yeah.
And coming in hot at number 27 in only its third week is Lainey Wilson's beautiful Watermelon Moonshine, produced by the genius known as Jay Joyce.
It was right after senior year, just before the summer disappeared. We went a riding them old farm ruts, hanging out on the gate of his truck. We threw a blanket neath the sunset, being brave as 18 gets. We gave each other more than our hearts, with the help of a mason jar. Drinking watermelon moonshine, cut the barn with a little light, parking back in them kudzu vines. I was his and every bit of that boy was mine. Too young to know what love was, but we were learning on the sweet buzz. There's never nothing like the first time, and mine's always gonna taste like.
And then our buddies Parmalee coming in at number 16 with Girl in Mine, produced by David Fanning.
In my t-shirt, in my ride, running circles in my mind. Couple billion in the world, baby, you're the only girl in mine. You took the single out of my life. Now I can't wait to see you tonight. In my seat, JC, messing with my rear view. No, I don't feel like me, girl, if I ain't got you. In my t-shirt, in my ride, running circles in my mind. Couple billion in the world, baby, you're the only girl. In that picture in my pocket, on my cell phone when I lock it, it's all you, no lie, baby, you're the only girl in mine.
And last but certainly not least, coming in at number 12 is Need a Favor from Jelly Roll, produced by Austin Nivereau.
I only talk to God when I need a favor.
And I only pray when I ain't got a prayer. So who the hell am I? Who the hell am I to expect a savior? Oh, if I only talk to God when I need a favor. But God, I need a favor. I know amazing grace, but I ain't been living them words. Swear I spend more Sundays drunk off my ass than I have in church. Hardcover King James, only been saving dust on the nightstand. And I don't know what to say by the time I fold my hands. I only talk to God when I need a favor. And I only pray when I ain't got a prayer. So who the hell am I? Who the hell am I to expect a savior? Oh, if I only talk to God when I need a favor. But God, I need a favor.
In the coming weeks, we'll see the releases of new songs from some amazing artists, including Latin artist Ramon, Brian Martin, Track 45, Tyler Farr, Dylan Schneider, Colby Cooper, and a whole bunch more. And that's it for me this week, you guys. Kirsty Krause here, live at BMG Studio A as your host for Enter the Atmosphere. Here we go, Jeff Huskins this week for his masterclass.
Great job, Kirsty. Again, special thanks to all of this week's artists, the producers, and the A&R staff for letting me be a part of their music. I'm very humbled. Thank you very much. All right, let's get into my mix template. I'm going to try to give you as much detail as I possibly can without just boring you to death. This template is a constant evolving process. I'm always changing it as my needs arise, but this is the most current version. I used it this morning, so let's get to it. All right, guys, here's my template. I'm going to basically go left to right. And again, if you have any questions or anything, just leave comments below. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions on some of the stuff, but I'm going to try to keep it just as simple as I possibly can. Okay, if you go to the left to right, you see drums, bass, guitars, keys, SFX, vocals, 2-mix, and effects. Those are all 712 routing folders. So when you're setting up a routing folder, you straight ahead and simple. You just go to new, you go down to 7.1.2, you come in and you go to a routing folder, and you create. And then let's just say, because I don't have one in here right now, it's called acoustic guitars. We could just say ACG. Now you have to have a way to get into it, and obviously we don't have a bus set up for this, so we'll go up to our I/O. Go up to our I/O and create a new path. And that path would be called a 712 path bus. You want to click the auto create your subpass and hit create. And then roll down to, there it is at the very bottom of the page here. And I like to go ahead and just name it in here. You can name it on the other page, but just call it ACG guitars. Okay. And hit OK. Now, the way I created that one is the way you create all these that I have here. My traditional layout, I would put it there, and I would definitely color this yellow. Then my traditional color for my acoustic guitars is yellow, so yellow. Okay, that's basically how you set up a routing folder. Simple. Just gotta make sure you have an I/O set up. So you come in here to your bus. We just set this up as ACG guitars, which is right there. Boom, now you have an ACG input, and all this stuff here is going to the bed. So the way I built this from day one was I wanted to make it where, because at that point in time I had decided whether I wanted to mix in the bed, did I want to mix in just objects, did you want to use both. And this gives you flexibility where you can do it either way. If you want to mix totally in the bed, this whole template is set up to do that. If you want to mix totally in objects, it's set up to do that as well. So, which makes it where you don't, if that's a creative choice you want to make, you can make it on the fly while you're working. You can, it's very, very flexible. Okay, so the way I've got this set up is I've got a drum, sub, bass, acoustic guitar now we just added, electric guitars, keys, SFX, vocals, 2-mix, and effects. Then to the right of that, we'll just go down the whole line, then we'll dig into it a little deeper. To the right of that, I've got this all in red, center, left, right, mid, side, rears, blah, blah, blah. This is basically where I've built a template out of objects, okay? So center is obviously going to the center. You can see where it's panned here. I'll blow this up just so you make sure you know what I'm talking about. It's going to the center. The next one's going to the right. Anyway, so left and right, and so forth and so on. So what you do to set that up is give it an object number. That's just simple as going here and grabbing one. And doing them in sequence so that you know where it is when you're mixing to it. And then name the inputs. Like this is the center input, this is an LR, mid, rear, front, rear. That way when you're mixing, and if you got a guitar, you got something you want to send it to the mids, you just put the output as mids. And it'll have a left-right panner on that channel, but you'll be coming into an object. So that gives you tons and tons of endless possibilities of what you can do. And we'll get more into this on why you want to have a template built out of objects later on. Then I've got a little VCA set up to where I can turn down beds and objects within the session. Then I've got just a bed master that turns all that down, and an object master to turn that down. You see it moves the objects there. And then all the music, everything, and then the LTC. So you got to set your LTC up in your template, and that's basically pretty self-explanatory how that works. If you're doing Pro Tools, you know how to do that. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning here. In my drum sub, if you blow it open, I've got a slam, I've got a drum verb, I've got a tom verb, and then I've got a kick LFE. A lot of times when you get drums and they come in, they're going to come in a stereo pair, and you're limited with what you can do as far as moving it around the room. So this is my setup. I've got it routed. You bring your drums into this routing folder, and then in parallel, I've got a parallel compression set up next to it where I'm using the Fab filter, and it's in a mono version, but you can see it's hitting, it's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 versions of that all through these. You can see it here. I don't know if you've never used that before, that's how that works. It's basically just come down, and when you're applying your plugin, use the multi-mono version. Same thing with the distressor here. This is a UAD distressor I've gotten here. Set up, ready to go. Slamming it pretty hard. So now you've got, if anything you send to this drum bus, you've got parallel compression set up. This is the input for it. So it's coming, everything's coming into this drum sub at the same time. It's coming in here automatically. It's coming in here automatically. And then you can just feather it in as how you want. So then, as far as sends off of this, to get it to where I can move it around the room, a pretty cool product and a cool trick. You don't want to overuse this, but for this instance, it's great. It works every time. I call it my up mix, and I can control how much I send to it here. Okay? The up mix is, I'm going to fast forward here, but I want you to know how I'm doing this. The up mix is going down here to my effects, my 714 effects, and it's in this group here. And it's called Upmix. It's right here. There's the Upmix input. That's going, its output is going to my effects sub, and that effects sub is in essence going to, at the end of the day, it goes to the bed. So whatever effects you're creating here is going to be all stored on the bed. So the way I do it is I put drums on the bed and nothing else. That's it. So any effect that I use on the drums is going to be sent back to that same bus, so it keeps everything cohesive. So on this Upmix, I'm using the Nugent Halo Upmix, and I've just got it set to an ambient 3D fill, which is like the first patch on the thing. You can play around with these and kind of move things around to how much you want to go to the rears and so forth and so on. And then the great part about it is you can feather in your drums to send a little bit to it, and it just gives it kind of an ambient feel in the room, or you can hit it hard and you got stadium drums. It's pretty amazing. It sounds great. It's not as cool as if you got individual stems where you got, your kick separate and snare separate and everything like that, but a lot of times you get stereo drums to deal with and you're stuck. So this is a cool way to get them more immersive in the room. So next up, so we've got the Upmix going to the effect, to the Nugent. Then I've got a separate thing set up for the sub and the LFE. Yeah, I know the LFE doesn't really, it's more of a crowd pleaser in the room. But I've got it set up to where you can add a little bit of it here, and it goes over here to where it says kick LFE. That's what I've got it set up for. And then I'm using the killer piece, the subharmonic piece from Avid. That's just the bomb. This thing rocks, and it's my settings and what I'm doing there. Just bumping a little here, bumping a little here. I'm 30 hertz, 45 hertz, and anyways, clean one on the drive, doing nothing. It's just basic settings. But I come off of this LFE to that, just to give it a little bit of thump, especially if you're doing something in the hip hop, pop, or if it's kick driven, you want to use a little bit of this. If it's more bass driven, then we do the same trick. I just got it set up differently for the bass. We'll get to that. Okay. Next thing I've got a 714 Verb. It's called the Stratus. It's the Stratus Verb. If you're familiar with that, I'll show you. That's back down here in my effects. And I've got two instances. Here's one. And I just leave this set on a room, basic room. I'm using the Tokyo Studio 1, which is a really cool preset. Just gives it a good room feel, makes the drums feel like they're alive, but it's not verbing them to death, and but just gives them a presence and kind of an air. They say it works great. So that's always there at my disposal, so I can add a little in or whatever. And that's coming directly off of this drum routing folder. Last but not least, I've got a couple of verbs sitting there. One I call drum verb, deverb. It's not deverb. It's, again, I'm a Fab Filter freak. I just love their products. They're amazing. But I use the Pro R here, and I use it a lot through all their products, through everything I do. Then I got I call it my Tom verb, but it's the whole Phil Collins, gated verb, non-lin kind of thing. That's always there if I need it. Very seldomly use that, but it's there. And I can't bring myself to take it off my template. It's the old school in me. Okay, so that's the drums. When drums are coming in, no matter if I get them into the session, I can either leave them out or they're exposed and I can see them, or I can drag them into the folders. If it's a huge session, I can knead it up and stuff like that. But and if I don't want to send them there, I can just send them to objects and keep them totally out of that. So it gives me that option. Next down the list is bass. And I've got bass just basically set up to where I've got an LFE coming off of it. And I don't even leave it on there because I very seldomly do it. But it's set up with the Pro Sub, just a little bit different settings. And, gives it a little bump on the low end, and it'll move the room pretty hard. So that's bass. And we just set up the acoustic guitar track just to show you, so there's nothing there. Electric guitars. Again, I've got an up mixer set just in case I get an electric. Like this happens every once in a blue moon, but I'll get a 2 mix of like 27 electric guitar parts, which it's not fun for a mixer, and then they want it to sound big and in the room, and you got this 2 mix. So in that instance, this works great for that. At least it gets it out into the room a little bit. You just can't overuse it, and you don't want it to be direct copies around the room. That sounds fatiguing and it'll drive you nuts. So that's it for the guitars. Then the keys, and again, these are all just routing folders where I got places. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. If I've got stereo drums, I'm always using that stereo routing folder. But usually with keys and stuff, everything it's going to be an object. It's just the way I roll. But again, I've got a verb set up here, and it's being routed to the overheads. So again, it's a big, huge, long verb from Fab. Love the thing. Next is for effects, things like swishes and transitional things. Try to put them there if I need to route them. Usually they're gonna stay in an object because it makes it easier to move it and manipulate it within the song. Okay. Vocals. I've got this set up to where I've got 3 templates. I've got my mix template that I'm showing you now. We're going to go through in detail all the way through it. And then I've got a mastering template that I've built to be able to master in Dolby Atmos. And then I have a template that I call Atmos First. And that's basically a template set up to where if you go in the studio and you're cutting and you're getting ready to mix, this is the first stop. It's not 2 mix first, it's Atmos first. Mix in Atmos and then render down in 2. So this has kind of evolved into my regular Atmos mixing template just because I like to have this here if I get a dry vocal and no verbs or no nothing, if I'm starting from scratch, I got these at my disposal. So this is EQs and compressors and all the normal things you would put on a bus for a vocal. Just it's all there ready to go. And we can go into more detail of that later, but that's always there. Then next I've got what I call two mix effects, which is basically stereo effects. And I use these a ton. And a lot of people think you got to buy these 714 verbs and all this stuff. And there's some great products out there from a lot of companies, but you'd be amazed at how much you can get done with just regular stereo effects. You don't have to have all that other stuff. Use what you got, and you'd be amazed at the results. Sometimes even a lot better because it's cleaner and it doesn't take up as much. Sometimes you don't want to take up all the real estate. You just want to take up a little bit of it. So in here, and the reason for doing this, just giving my philosophy, is I don't want to think about this when I'm mixing. If I go, man, it'd be cool to have a slap. Well, I got a slap. Here it is, right here, and it's set up a little short delay on an H delay, and then I've got them all set right now to where they all go to the 2 mix effects bus, which is going back to the bed. Again, like I said, this whole template set up to where you can mix in the bed only if you want to. I don't, but it's set up like that. So let's say if I'm in a song and I decide I want to use an early reflection of a verb or a tail of a verb, I've got this great piece here from Fab. It's called Timeless 3. It's their new delay that's just, thing is amazing. Sounds incredible. And then I use some R-verb is another one I use. And then I've got quarter note delays, eighth note delays, and I've got a long throw set up. And then I've got a reverb throw set up. And these are all of course, will be timed depending on your tempo. If I decide to use one, let's just say I want to use a quarter note delay and I want to put it on a guitar solo or something. The way I've got this set up is I've got one going high in the top corner, one going in the rear of the room low. So it gets feels great when you use it. But the minute I get ready to use this one, the first thing I'm going to do, because I'm staying totally 100% in objects when I'm mixing, except for the drums. So I'll come over here and I'll come down to the nearest object, let's say it's 4950 or whatever, and I will immediately turn that on. Now, when I send to that, it's an object as well. So, and if I don't use them, I won't mess with it. I'll save the objects for something else more important. But that's my two mix or stereo effects that I use in the Dolby Atmos world. And I had one of our first shows was about how we used a reverb in there, and this is just a bunch of that same concepts multiplied, but they're here at my disposal, so I can keep rocking and not have to think about stuff like that. All right, moving along here. Okay, now we're at the effects bus. And this is where I've got my traditional 712, 714, depending on the product, things set up. I've got one I call Energy, and it's an energy panner. This is a great product made by Sound Particles, and it's got tons of things that it'll do. And you can automate it to do all kinds of, it's a really cool piece. If you haven't, check it out. You use it a lot. Next, I've got the amazing Slapper 2. It's a delay that you can literally manipulate and put, a delay in every speaker in the room. Next up from that, I've got Stratus that we showed you earlier. That's the one I keep on Tokyo Studio 1 for my drum room. Then I've got another one, it's on some random something, but it's there in case I need it. Then Symphony 3D, which is another really great product by Exponential Audio. They're a great company. And I've just got a plate, Verb, sitting there ready to go. These are all 714, Atmos effects. Then there's my up mixer that we used for the drums earlier when we get a 2 mix of drums. Now, the next thing up is my Fab Pro Reverb setup with 3 instances where they're panned to different parts of the room, and I did a complete show on that of how I do that with objects. So I won't go back over that, but there's that. Then I do the exact same effect. It's basically 3 sets of objects going to 3 spots in the room, right up front, midway up, kind of raising through the room as it goes. And this one I'm using the Eventide, whatever you want to call it, liquid reverb on the front. Then the next mid room is this crazy all pass delays. It's moving around and doing weird little frequency things. This is a bizarre effect. It's really fun though. And then last is a drum groove machine at the very end. It just makes it do insane stuff. But again, it's set up as the stereo end of 3 separate instances of the H3000 and so forth. Okay. Now this one's fun. Here in the purple where it says I loop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. That's what I call the infinity loop. And what it is basically I'm sending a signal that's going to left speaker, then it's being fed to the center, to the right, to the side, to the rear, to the other rear, back to the side, and then back in to the left. So it's causing a feedback loop, okay? Now, with experimenting with this, I found that when you play with the gas, if you get above 0, it's going to keep feeding back, getting louder and louder and louder, and it's going to explode. and everybody knows what that sounds. It's not pleasant. But if you feather it back a little bit below, It'll just make one trip around the room or 2 trips around the room. And how you control the speed that it's going to is with delays. So up here, I've got good old mod delay number 2 or 3, number 3. Set at either quarters or eighths or whatever you want to. These are all grouped, so they all will change together as you go down the list. Or you can make them all different. You can play with it however you want to. And then leading into that, I've got a filter so that it gets that darker thing. But in the next episode, I'm going to introduce audio to this to kind of show you what everything does so you can hear it. Right now, I'm just kind of going through and showing you how my setup is. But that thing's it's a trip. It's a lot of fun. Everybody gets a good wow. It's a wow factor. You don't want to do it all the time, and you don't want to do it just very, very sparse when you use it, but it is super cool when you do. It just runs the room, and you can control it. Go super fast or super slow. You can do it on the tail of a vocal or the end of a guitar solo, or it's great effect. Again, and these are all set up so that they're always there at my disposal. It's a send I can pull up instantly, and boom, I got it. Someone says, hey, it would be cool to run something around the room. Well, you think about the process of automating that and doing that by hand, and it's going to take a while, or setting up the Dolby Panner, which is a great product as well. This is just something that's always there, ready to go. So next thing I call this Voodoo, because it kind of is. I'm using, and this is the same setup. It's 3 auxes, all stereo inputs, all with the same input, going to 2 objects in the front, 2 in the middle halfway up, and then 2 at the rear of the room all the way to the top. So I'm using Slapper in the front set like this. I don't know if you can see that. And then a little different one on number 2. And then a totally crazy one on the end. Then these are running into a little bit of reverb. Actually, a lot of reverb. And then this is running into a compressor, using it like a ducker. So then I've got this key input that I'll put on. I can use this on something where I want it to. Basically, it's off. It's off. It's on. If it's on, you're basically keying the input. Y'all know how to do that. If you don't, I'll explain later. But I call that my side piece that's coming in. So that's Voodoo. The next thing after that is where I've set up my object bed, and then so forth and so on down to the end of the thing. So that's all I'm going to get into today, and it's a lot. This stuff is not difficult to set up. It just takes time. It takes some experimentation. But I can tell you the things you want to have, and you can do it any way you want. You can use any kind of plugins you want but just having them there. If you are constantly going to a quarter note delay or an eighth note delay, or you're constantly going to a reverb swell at the end of a vocal kind of fill the gap kind of thing, or if you're whatever it is that you use on a regular basis, set it up in advance. Because when you're mixing an Atmos, you don't want to sit here and try to do, a brand new this or a brand new that. It will drive you crazy. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded, and I'm sure there'll be a million questions. And my plans are, as soon as we launch our web page, we'll have this up and make this available to you guys in some way, form, or fashion. Don't know how that's going to work yet, but we'll be sharing the wealth. And that's it. That's it for today, and we'll get into a little bit more next week. Thanks.
Don't forget, subscribe and click the bell down below, and make sure you get notified for all of our upcoming episodes here at Enter the Atmosphere.